Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us and being with us as we continue these conversations that we've been having throughout the Financial Innovation Summit. I'm really glad to be joined by one of two men who are going to be talking with me for the next few minutes behind Chia, which touts itself as a more sustainable, faster, and secure blockchain platform. Right now with me is David Frazee. He is a managing partner of Richmond Global Ventures, and he is also a board member of Chia Networks. David, thank you so much for being here.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
So, David, let's just start here. For people who may not know, what exactly is Chia and how does it differentiate itself from other blockchain platforms?
Sure. Well, it may help to step back and ask the bigger question about what does blockchain need to look like in order to power large sections of the economy in 20 years? Because that is definitely where we're going. And a lot of the current blockchains have certain deficiencies that make it hard for national governments, for multinational institutions, central bankers, corporations, and others to adopt it. So Chia was essentially designed asking the question, what would Bitcoin look like if we could redesign it today? And what will be necessary to power trillions of dollars of the world economy in the financial services sector, asset sector, and adjacents? So Chia has focused first upon sustainability. So Chia uses, depending upon how you measure, 1/300th to 1/10,000th of the energy of, say, Bitcoin, which is important for the long-term sustainability of a blockchain. It fixes a number of the security flaws and security issues with other blockchains, and it's built by the world's, I think, best distributed network architect, Bram Cohen, who built BitTorrent. It has compliance built into it, both in the sense it has never itself been an illegal securities offering, like a number of tokens and coins out there, and enables compliance, which is important for larger institutions. Peer-to-peer transfer, maybe that isn't so important, but the ability, if you're the CFO of a Fortune 20 company, to have auditable, traceable transactions that are compliant with Sarbanes-Oxley and the highest accounting standards. And similarly, if you're a national government, to have auditable, traceable transactions is absolutely crucial. It's programmable, meaning that it has all of the capacity to build applications and services, because you have to understand, when we think of blockchain, people think of cryptocurrencies and, get rich quick 20-year-olds out trading and talking about, different coins, but it's really the rails of the new economy. It's the underlying infrastructure that permit the exchange of money, goods, assets, and their adjacents, which ultimately become the internet of markets across all markets. So it has to have programmability and the capacity to create different applications on it. And finally, it's public and it's equitable. It's an open source project. Anyone can create a node and be a farmer. So it's inclusive in that sense. It doesn't require hundreds of thousands of dollars of specialized computer equipment that you have to have for other cryptocurrencies and other blockchains. And the applications that will ultimately be built on these rails, I believe, will have an important effect on the middle and working class of the world in enabling their access equitably to financial services and products that are not foreclosed to them today, but are prohibitively expensive or slow or have intermediaries that add a lot of friction to the process.
And I'd love to bring in, we saw Gene Hoffman pop into here. He is the second person joining us. Gene is President and Chief Operating Officer of Chia Networks. Gene, can you just build on what David just said? I mean, how were you actually able to do that? Did you ask yourself, if you could rebuild Bitcoin, what would you do? What went into sort of Chia?
Yeah, it was very much looking at the state of the art 11 years after Bitcoin. And we started about 4 years ago. This was not a short project in that sense. And it was taking a disciplined approach. One of the things we didn't do is do an ICO in 2017. Bram certainly could have, being one of the most famous protocol engineers out there. Instead, it was, okay, what is the state of the art? What are the real problems? And in fact, Bram invented new math in 3 different places on our product roadmap to really be able to deliver the technology that's necessary to answer some of these hard problems. In 2009, Bitcoin kind of didn't have a sense of what would the application layer look like. And no one really had a sense about how you might go to market and fund development. One of the things to me that's been sad about the Bitcoin development story is it's been begware to some extent. It's developers out there saying, hey, the new guys, you should donate to them. And it's, a kind of troubling situation where people are making millions of dollars while the actual developers there were not getting paid. And so backing up to your point, we really looked at the three major flaws. We looked at sustainability because, if Bram and I were able to deploy internet money and the rails for financial infrastructure globally, that is the promise, you end up using something like 20% of the world's baseband power. And that's exactly the long legacy, right? We also think that blockchain should have gotten product market fit in 2017, but we think that the early adopters took a look at the offerings at a time that was really Ethereum and its Solidity programming environment and said, we can't have the risks that we see out of the DeFi infrastructure on Ethereum. $113 million last week was lost. This week, I think it was $20 million. This was not something that the CIO of a major bank, the head of information tech at NGO or multilateral could accept.
Well, so how, though, do you actually measure those green components that you were talking about, being sustainable and being equitable? Because, of course, that is something that, we're talking about, especially during COP. But how is it that you're actually measuring that and ensuring that you are providing an opportunity that other platforms are not? Gene?
Well, I will say there's no such thing as a free lunch. So there is some energy use to be able to get the security that Bitcoin also has, right? But I like using Hoover dams. It takes 28 Hoover dams to run Bitcoin annually, okay? And, if you think about Hoover Dam, that's a large amount of power. Right now, to run the Chia network, it takes 6% of a Hoover Dam. So if we had 15 times the size of our already 40 exabyte network, it would be one Hoover Dam's worth of annual power consumption. And, it compares well to the banking infrastructure, to the New York Stock Exchange, to Visa and MasterCard. When you add those things together, and those are the things that fundamentally are going to ride on the rails of a, enterprise class blockchain, it's actually as well or better, but it's much more secure. And that goes to your second part of your question. Bitcoin at its peak had 210,000 full nodes. It is now around 65,000 full nodes on a kind of day-to-day basis. At our peak earlier this year, we hit around 750,000 full nodes and currently have between 300,000 and 400,000 full nodes. Really important for two reasons. I mean, first of all, to be clear, we are now the largest public blockchain ever. It goes to the point that we are massively globally distributed. I mean, if you want to know where our nodes are, you kind of compare GDP and internet access globally. And, that's really why we can sort of firmly say that you've got that more security. You've got to go convince 200,000 node runners that they should change the rules of the road. And that's what's really led to, the news we're talking about today.
Yeah, and I want to talk to you both about some of that news. You have just announced, you're announcing today about the World Bank partnership, which sort of goes in line with what Chia is touting. Talk about that and sort of how that is going to have an effect on, lowering emissions, which we're all trying to strive for.
Yeah, this is a really interesting program by the World Bank. We're really excited to be a technology partner to them with, the entire world, frankly. It's creating a public good, which is the climate warehouse. And the idea behind the climate warehouse is to create a, and I love blockchain this way, decentralized, centralized database. So the idea is that every nation's carbon registry, every existing carbon registry can come together in a single place, be able to report the kind of history of carbon credits, and then be able to track and audit them as they're retired over time to really address the double spend issues. Has this carbon credit been retired twice? Can we make these markets now cross-nation and cross-border? And we will be continuing to work on that with some additional announcements we'll be making over the next month or two. But the whole hope here is all of the great things about a blockchain. I mean, it's permissionless. So, individual nations, individual carbon registries kind of have equal footing inside that. It's using a new piece of technology we call data layer, which allows you to have kind of a set of federated databases where, say, one country owns one table in that database. And so that's where they're going to update and change their carbon credit counts. But everyone else can see when they update and cryptographically prove that they're downloading the right update from each of the databases, and all stay in sync. What's on chain is just the audit material. So the chain publicly, continues to be able to be easy to be synced to 400,000 people. But then in the background, they're going to create websites and other things where you can really programmatically guarantee that, yes, this is country X's entire carbon registry. These are the changes over time.
Yeah, and it's
And
important.
David, yeah, I'd love for you to jump in. And I was just going to say, there's been some criticism though about carbon credits specifically. So where does blockchain sort of fit in here as to sort of pushing us closer to becoming greener?